coming up on his show, celebrity birthdays, what's on deck, all that coming up. But it is Thursday. Normally Thursday at 8, we check in with the one, the only Sam Amick. But he's in Vegas. Give him a little grace period. Want to get 9 o'clock as Sam now joining us from The Athletic, brought to you by Jiffy Lube. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Jay. I greatly appreciate the extra hour, my friend. Thank you.
Did that help?
It did. Yeah, it did. It was 8 would have been tough. I would have done it, but it would have been tough.
I know you're a gamer. When did you arrive yesterday to Vegas or?
2 days ago. We so our company
that's right.
has turned the summer league into a summit where our whole staff comes out here. We have a big meeting yesterday with discussing coverage all day long with a bunch of company stuff, which to be honest is pretty enjoyable. So but yeah, 2 days ago.
How's business? Is business booming at The Athletic?
No, it's good. It's good. I mean, we're quite a few years now into the New York Times partnership, and that part is, a little more streamlined than ever. The word, not to get into media talk too much, but to be honest, very grateful that a company exists where a bunch of, people not only get to pay their bills by writing about sports, but when you get everybody in the same room, like whatever you do for a living, like it's a lot of fun to be in the room with, somewhere between 40 and 50 folks who go through a similar version of what you go through and share ideas and share thoughts and strategies and just kind of have a skull session. So that part, it's a pretty unique media environment that I don't take for granted.
That's awesome. And I'm heading out to Vegas later today as Summer League gets going. Anxious to be down there. It's always fun to be there for a few days to kind of take it all in. Besides work related at the front end of your Vegas trip, what else are you trying to achieve? I mean, here's where you continue to make your connections, but are you going to Vegas with any storylines in your head at all, Sam?
I mean, we're tracking everything. Obviously, the Jonathan Kuminga thing, I think we'll certainly talk about a little bit. We've reached that point, Jay, where, no, I wrote about the Lakers and Clippers the other day. You're trying to make sure that you're on top of the different storylines, but admittedly, you're also looking at the calendar and vacations coming around the corner. So we're getting there. This is kind of our finish line. But relationship wise, as far as the job, Vegas is a great spot because, I'll go to the gym today, be there all day and talk to people from teams and just get FaceTime in the kind of way that you don't get and really any other time of year because it's, so many people in the same room.
Yeah, and we've already kind of had the immediacy. We had a bunch of trades from the NBA Finals Game 7 to before the draft. We had the first splash of free agency. There's still other guys out there, and you mentioned Kuminga, the restricted free agent, Sam. I think it's just been a kind of a brutal summer for that group based on second apron, lack of money out there. We'll kind of go back to Kuminga and where are we on that? I mean, it sure seems like there's just not as much out there for him besides the Warriors or if they're going to take probably a deal that they don't want to take.
Yeah. I mean, it is tough. I mean, free agency in general, obviously is not what it used to be. There's just not much money out there. Guys are moving, by trade, in today's NBA and so many guys sign their extensions that of course we've had free agents, but they're just not high profile guys. With Kuminga, it's a really tricky one because you've got all this angst that has been built up these past couple of years where he thought he could be so much more with the Warriors and him and his people have kind of created this vision where he sees himself as a guy that's going to get big time money and that money is just not there. And so now things could change quickly certainly, but lately it has seemed like him going back to the Warriors is for sure on the table. The Kings I think absolutely have interest. And then as it's just they've basically set parameters on this thing. Like we would love to have you at our price and our, what works for our books and our plan. And if that's not going to happen, I don't see them doing it. So, these first world problems, but yeah, he's in a tough spot.
Yeah, I think observing us from afar and reading stuff that you have and others, it seems like it's actually been a smart play on the Kings' behalf. I don't know that it's going to land him, but I think, you certainly don't want to do an overpay and risk things, but you kind of have the Warriors in a tough spot. And I think if I'm handicapping it, Sam, I agree. Don't you think he ends up just back with Golden State? I just don't know what kind of financial terms they get to.
Yeah, I mean, probably. This will be an interesting week, though, because his agent has felt like, that there is a perception of Jonathan that is not, consistent with who he actually is. And so I think he's going to get some FaceTime with teams in Vegas. And that I think we'll see if that makes a difference in terms of, getting eyes on the guy, having conversations with him, and maybe whether it's the Kings or any other team. We know Chicago's in it, and Miami's got their guy now. So, but whatever team it is, it's that idea of, would they be willing to go a little farther with him contract wise once they really sit down in a room with him and get to know, how he thinks about the game, how hardworking he's going to be, just the human touch. That was part of their plan, was to add that at Summer League and see what happens from there. So I think that's probably the next development.
I want to follow up on that because I think it's interesting that the agent maybe feels in their camp that there's a misperception on him, but that's where I want to go, because when I think about Kuminga, my only reservation as, someone that would like to see the Kings get him would be, I see the talent, you could see where all the positives are. I just never felt, Sam, that the Warriors were fully in love with him, or didn't play him at some times that I didn't fully understand without, full knowledge. So I have my own questions on that. What do you think the agent feels like is that misperception with him?
Well, it's just there was a level of negativity around him in the publicly with the Warriors that you remember 2 years ago, less than 2 years ago, he kind of went at Steve Kerr in public, and at the time it was our Anthony Slater and Shams, when he was with us, had written a story that was like that Jonathan Kuminga has lost faith in Steve Kerr. So, they have been pretty aggressive in trying to get what they want from the Warriors. And so I think, people who know him, I haven't had anybody say terrible things to me about Jonathan at all. And this summer in particular, he looks like a guy that, I'm fascinated to see a few years from now what kind of player he is in the NBA, because he is moving like somebody who believes that he can be a star. And then, the Warriors people, of course, their constant kind of retort is that he's just not well-rounded enough with his game. He doesn't have, the best instincts when it comes to, the defensive side of the ball, and doesn't hit the glass and doesn't do all the things that, it's been such an uncomfortable comparison. If you look at Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski, where it's like one guy thinks he's a star, the other guy just went out and did what he had to do to get time, and is a more trusted member of that program. So, that's the kind of stuff that, they want to convey that message to other teams that, no, he's about the right things. He's trying to win, and he just wants to have a good chance here.
Talking with Sam Amick from The Athletic, brought to you by our friends at Jiffy Lube. Sam, you've had some stuff over the past couple weeks about the Kings, and Kuminga was a name, and Westbrook and Schroeder. Now we know Schroeder is a King. But even on the trade front, it seems relatively quiet. That's probably also just as difficult in circles right now. Maybe Scott Perry's not hearing what he wants for, whether it's DeRozan, Levine, Monk, pick your Kings player. What's any kind of late intel on that? Because it seems very, very quiet lately.
Not as of the last couple of days, but the Westbrook thing is interesting, and certainly, I'll couch this by saying I could be wrong, but the sense that I had gotten was that, that the Kings, Scott, have a lot of affinity for Russ without question, but the backcourt is pretty crowded already, and there was concern about making it even worse. So I have certainly been leaning in the direction of thinking that was not going to happen. And nothing's changed roster wise to change, the logjam that they would have by making a move like that. But, we know they've been active, but it's obviously been, pretty quiet recently.
As far as around the league yesterday, Phoenix is kind of doing a little bit of an overhaul, obviously trading Durant, potential buyout here for Bradley Beal, and then the big contract extension for Booker. That this team intrigues me with Ishbia and kind of new ownership. I don't feel like they're doing the full breakdown, but what do you think about what Phoenix has done this offseason with some of those moves?
It's, everybody seems around the league, feels like there's one move they got to make that where you got to rip the Band-Aid off and start over. And that was trade Devin Booker, and they're not doing it. So, this halfway measure, or this half measure rather, is I mean, it's gonna be fine. You know, they're gonna win some games. They're not gonna be a good team. And you know, you know, buying Brad out, which I think is gonna get finalized this week. I mean, it's messy. You know what I mean? That's the word that comes to mind. You know, I don't know if you mentioned it, Jay, but you know, James Jones, the GM that obviously was there when they got to the finals, is he leaves yesterday for the kind of the top cop role in the NBA, the former Joe Dumars role in the league office. And so, you know, they're just in a tough spot. You know, they're a very expensive, mediocre team, and that has not changed this summer. I mean, moving off of Kevin, you know, they got what they got, but it's you know, a long ways to go for sure.
Where do you think Beal ends up? Is it the Clippers?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, that's all signs are pointing to the Clippers. You know, that could always change, but folks around the league are expecting him to have a Clipper jersey on.
I know in the past you've covered the Bucks. You spent time with them last year before the start of their season. Giannis watch is always out there. What's your latest read on him? There was kind of more rumors early on. Seems like he's somewhat comfortable, but what do you think's going on with Giannis?
Yeah, it's funny. We just, you know, it's like the absence of, you know, of him raising his hand and asking out for the Bucks is all they can ask for. But he also, you know, has not raised his hand and said, "I'm good. You know, let's go to work." You know, he tweeted some confusion and stuff that would concern me if I was the Bucks after they lost Brook Lopez, and then of course they did the Miles Turner deal. Giannis, and I think this was recent. He did I forget the guy's name, but he did a show with somebody just the other day that just showed up on my social media where he was doing it. It's not a basketball thing, but a guy asked him in the interview, you know, are you going to stay in Milwaukee? And he said probably. You know, so I mean that's where he put it when he was asked. He said probably, you know, I love Milwaukee, and that part's true. I mean, it's neat as far as a small market story that he does have a ton of affinity for the city, for the franchise, doesn't want to go anywhere, but also, and this is the type of thing that, you know, I think even LeBron ran into this summer. You mentioned the second apron and this CBA. Excuse me. It's just not. It's not as easy for these guys to get where they might want to go. And, you know, in today's day and age, you can't just say, you know, this situation's imperfect. I want to get traded over here. Like a lot of these trades, because of, you know, the complexity of the rules and the restrictions are literally not executable. And a player like Giannis, you know, is in a situation where, you know, it's just not as simple as saying, I think I'm done with the Milwaukee chapter. Getting somewhere that you want to go and getting there in the kind of way that leaves the roster in the kind of shape you want it to be in to go contend somewhere else is pretty.
Sam, I think we lost you for a second there, so we'll see if we get oh yeah, I think you froze there for a second. So we'll see if we can get Sam back here. Okay, we got Sam back. So Sam, just to follow up on that last thing you were saying, are you noticing a pushback though now from, I guess that would be GMs, agents, players, about it is more difficult to kind of make these trades and kind of the restrictions of where contracts are and aprons and so on. Do you sense a league-wide pushback on that?
Still kind of gathering, you know, feedback, I guess. But you know, it just I can't tell you how many different things you hear about that seem to die on the vine because you know, just because of those complexities. I mean, it's funny, in our company meeting yesterday, we did a little video panel where one of the questions was, is this CBA working? And I said, well, you know, is it working for who? Like, you need to finish the question. It's working for the owners who wanted controlled costs and who want, you know, really kind of the ability to always be able to tell the fans, you know, sorry, we had to lose this guy, you know, second apron, too much money. But it's not, I don't think it's working for the GMs. I think it's pretty tough to get work done. Now, granted, we've seen a lot of trades in this summer, so it's not like you're not having action. But when it comes to the big boys and $50-60 million salary slots,
yeah,
you know, that's a different conversation.
Well, one of those guys is Nikola Jokic. I don't know if we read more into it or not. Denver's been active. They've been aggressive. He didn't sign his potential extension. Anything more to that? Just kind of maybe a better opportunity later, keeping the pressure on the Nuggets. How much of an eye should we keep on that? Oh, I think we lost Sam again. Gosh darn it. I was anxious to hear what that answer will be. We'll see if we can get Sam connected back with us here. We're having a few of our technical difficulties, so we appreciate those of you hanging tight with that.
All right, good old hotel Wi-Fi. You got me?
Yeah, we got you now. I don't know if you heard that, Sam, but the last
I
part
did.
was basically
Yeah,
okay.
I got your audio. So there's no signs that he wants out of Denver.
Okay.
And I've talked to Nuggets about this, and I've been through this a million times where the organization hates it that we speculate, maybe it's a bad sign on the extension. To be honest, Jay, like in my own defense, I wrote something yesterday talking about how the Lakers and Clippers are already game planning for either next summer or the summer after that. They want one of these big boys to kind of, break loose, whether it's Giannis or Joker. Those are the two main guys. But, whoever of that number, it's a pretty short list. And their thing was, there's no sign that he doesn't want to be there. And the comparison that I give them is De'Aaron Fox, because, not the same caliber of player, but how many times did we hear about how De'Aaron had turned down the extension and his camp at the Kings? Well, nothing to see here. It's just because he can make more money if he waits, that type of thing. And that's fine. But what it does is it guarantees that now, Joker has another decision to make next summer. So if you can't tell me if this next coming season is a train wreck for the Nuggets,
Right.
that won't be an issue. Now, yes, like he can sign a 4-year extension if he waits, more money, it lines up potentially better with his next extension when he's older. So there's plenty of plausible deniability for why he did it. But they also are coming off a year where they fired their coach and the GM, and yes, they got to the second round, but that's not, this guy's trying to win championships. So they have a new front office that actually is off to a really strong start with John Wallace and Ben Tenzer and David Adelman coaching the team. So, I'm basketball wise, I'm really curious to see what they do this year because they were so close to knocking OKC off in the playoffs. But yeah, if you're a Nuggets fan, like you want a guy like that to sign the extension every time just so you can sleep at night.
Talking with Sam Amick here. Sam, as we continue to bounce around the league in New York, when they got rid of Tibbs, very controversial, but it's like, all right, I'm sure they got someone in mind. And then we heard about all the different coaches that they offered or wouldn't get permission. And then here we are. It's former King Mike Brown is their head coach, who I actually think will do great there, but there's obviously some great pressure. There's huge expectations. What was your whole thought on just that process and now how Mike Brown is the coach of the Knicks?
Yeah, strange, really, really strange process. I wrote about it a few weeks ago. My whole thing was that they very quickly revealed that they had no plan initially besides firing Tom Thibodeau, and that's really shocking because of the job that he did. Like, to me, it's one of those things where you don't fire a guy like that unless you have somebody that you've decided is better waiting in the wing. That's not what they did. So, they run around asking for permission of 5 different currently employed head coaches. Interviewed a handful of folks, even talked to Don Staley, legendary women's coach, and go with Mike Brown. And that I think Mike's a fantastic coach, and I think he'll do a really good job. It is like, man, it's like, I mean, he's getting paid 4 years, almost $40 million. So not playing my violin for Mike, but from a pressure standpoint, it's a tricky one. Like, I can't remember, a job where it was like the team got this far. So, think about, this is probably a bad comparison, but like if he had gotten the Kings to the conference finals, that would have been legendary. You know what I mean? If he gets the Knicks to the conference finals, then he failed.
Right.
That's all there is to it. Like, so he's got a very, very, very small, window to be considered a success here. And it's a team that, like, if we talked about the whole league on paper and I just said, are you going to handicap the Knicks as your champion? It's like, no, I'm not. I'm handicapping OKC. and that's not Mike Brown's fault. So I'm curious to see how that goes, because it's in the context of New York media and Knick fans, and and the fact that Tom Thibodeau did have a lot of people, a lot of fans who loved him, and if Mike and the Knicks fall short, it might get a little tough out there.
That's for sure. As we're talking with Sam Amick, who's in Las Vegas. Today's Summer League begins. Kings play this afternoon. I'm anxious to see some of their young guys and some of the returning guys that they have there. But 30 minutes later, Sam, it's Cooper Flagg, Bronny James. Am I going to be the only one in Cox Pavilion watching the Kings because everybody else is in the other gym?
You might be, my friend. You might be.
I think I know where you'll be, right?
I'll be there. I'm actually, this will be fun. I've never done this. I'm bringing out one of my sons and his buddy to the game, so they'll be watching it. Yeah, I mean, it should be a good time. I was talking to some writers last night about Bronny in general and how I know the fans get tired of hearing about Bronny because it's because he's LeBron's boy. That's why we talk about him a lot. But basketball wise, there's some signs of him getting quite a bit better. And, we were talking about different player comps last night of at his best, who he could be. Somebody threw out a Marcus Smart, and it was that's a little too ambitious. But, a good role player. I think somebody mentioned Bruce Brown, so I'm curious to see if he can establish himself this year as a legitimate rotation player. And then the Cooper thing, I was at the Team USA training camp here in Vegas that legendary day when Cooper, at the time at the age of 18, got on the floor with LeBron and Steph and KD and all those guys and just blew them away. And it was just crazy. The buzz in the building. We got to watch some of it, the back end of that game from up in the balcony in the arena. And that has now become part of his lore. He went from impressing these legends that day to having a wonderful season, obviously, and it looks like he's going to be a really special player. But yes, that's where the rest of the world's going to be, Jay. You'll be over watching the Kings game.
And I don't know if Dallas has even said this or they even have to, but I remember Wembanyama had the same kind of hype, and he played the one game, and it was kind of all right, we're good. We'll shut him down. I don't know if Dallas has those plans, nor do they have to state them, but I am anxious to see what he is going to look like, at least in phase one, and what he ultimately could be, because that's there's a lot of pressure on him, but I think he's the kind of guy that can kind of back up this hype. At least it seems like it.
No, for sure. I mean, you talk about pressure. It's it's wild that the Mavs, after everything that happened with the Luka trade, that they found this escape hatch out of some of the pressure, and now there's all this excitement and buzz from Mavs fans, despite the Kyrie Irving injury and everything that came before. Cooper's coming to save the day, so we'll see how it goes.
What's your length of time in Vegas? You there for a little bit or a long time?
Not too long, just through today's Thursday. What's the date today? I'm losing track of time.
10th?
I think I'm here till Saturday. It's just a couple more days. Gonna keep it brief. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the right amount of time there. Yeah. So I'll see you down there later today. Maybe if I make my way over to that JV game that you're going to watch. But Sam, thank you so much as always. We appreciate it. We'll see you in Vegas.
All right, brother. See you today.
All right. Thank you. That's the great Sam Amick joining us from Las Vegas a little later.